You do that by review. You cannot have a person remember it unless they review it. This is where you solidify. You solidify. You're pushing it in. This is where you practice over and over again until the people have it. You take a quiz, and if that 90% or more don't ace it, you haven't taught it. That's class. That's during class. Now, if you didn't meet with your class again for a couple of weeks and gave them a quiz on the material you had just taught them in class, would they be able to get an A on it? No. Why not? Because we're kind of like a sieve. You know, it comes in and then immediately goes. So what do you have to do? You have to go from short-term memory to long-term memory. You got to keep pushing that information back further, back further, back further, until you can say to somebody 20 years later, what's 7 times 7? 49. Well, did you review it last year? No. Why not? I'll never forget that. Riding a bike. Eventually, it moved from here to here. How did that happen? You reviewed it. You must review. We have in our minds that I need to spend all of my time giving you new material or I'm wasting your time. If you want to see a shocker, you take the life of Christ and study the material that he taught, and you'll see he reviewed over and over and over again. He said the same way in a parable. He said something in a direct conversation. He did a miracle that made a comment about it. He said the same idea over and over again. Why? There's a few things I want the world to get. These are them, and I'm going to keep saying them till you get them. So should you. Therefore, box number 5 is the box that we're using the word master, and that is after class, which means after the class that you've just taught them the material, classes that follow. You review it and review it and review it until you should be able to say to somebody, hey, how many books in the Old Testament? You dealt with that the first week, 16 weeks ago. Give me the outline of Judges. What do you say about the heathen question? Give me the 5 verses that prove to me that Jesus Christ is God, not just the Son of God. What do you say about the Mormons who say that? It's not the test. It's not the test. It's whether they got it or not. Therefore, help them master it. Got to come back and retrain them till they become skillful, till they have a high degree of proficiency. Proficiency. That takes place after class.
Once you have gathered your material and boiled it down to the minimum, your next responsibility is to make it mind easy. As we've mentioned before, there are 7 ways to make any content easy for a person's mind to remember. During this stage, you're going to be reformatting the material so that it flows easily into the person's mind with a minimum amount of effort and a maximum amount of retention. How can you get a lot of material quickly in a person's mind? That's the heart of speed teaching. I wish we had an hour for each one of these 7 maximizers, but unfortunately we don't. What we do have is we have enough time to give you just a brief overview of each one of these and encourage those of you who really want to become skilled to take a deeper look at the 7 Laws of the Learner textbook. Right now, though, turn in your notebook to the retention maximizer. The first one is represent the facts in a picture. Represent the facts in a picture. Well, go back to the beginning of this law. And we showed you that picture, remember? With the grandfather sitting down on the porch and he had something in his hand. What did he have in his hand? Right, he had an apple. And what was spelled on the back of that turtle as it was walking along, you remember? Yeah, you do. It was apple. Because something you see, you can remember. Maybe that's why God used so many dreams and visions in the book of Daniel. Weren't they all just pictures and images that God put in his mind and his dreams so that he would never forget? I mean, who among us can forget the head of gold and the shoulders and so forth of silver? Well, there's a lot more that we can be sharing with you about this idea of using pictures to make things mind easy. And at the end of the law, we're going to show you a lot more about the concept of pictures. Let's take a look at number 2. Express the facts with logic. Let me just give you a little bit of an overview of that. Over here on the flip chart, one of the ways we help people to remember how many books there are of the Old and New Testament is we take a look at something logical, simple as counting the letters. Here's the word Old Testament. Well, how many books are there in the Old Testament? Well, there are 1, 2, 3 letters in Old, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 letters in Testament. There are 39 books in the Old Testament. And if you take 3, 9 and multiply it, so it's 3 times 9, what do you get? You get 27. That's how many books there are in the New Testament. Logic is the same way you can remember the book of Romans. The book of Romans flows logically. The first 3 chapters are about sin, which presents the problem. The next 2 chapters, 4 and 5, is the answer to that sin. It's salvation and how it occurs in a man's life, in a woman's life. But after you've been saved, the next question is, how do you keep on growing? And that's the whole concept of chapters 6, 7, and 8. You grow in sanctification. But in the middle of all that, as the author's talking about that, he says, yeah, but what happened to the Jewish nation? What happened to them? And that's in chapters 9, 10, and 11, where it deals with the sovereignty of God's choices and how he's working with the Jews and the Gentiles. And then after that parenthesis is over, he goes right back to how you should live your life in service. So it's sin, the need, salvation, the answer. Once you got it, how to keep going it, a parenthesis about a particular group of people, and then to keep on growing in your service. It's logic. Number 3, transfer the facts by the alphabet. By the alphabet. That's the easiest to do. We call this alliteration. And you've probably done this since you were a little tiny child. Remember playing the piano? Remember every good boy does fine? A way to remember the scale? Or the 7 laws of the learner. L, learner. E, expectation. A, application. Retention, and so forth. We use the alphabet to remember. I remember a while ago, we were trying to help people remember the books of the New Testament in order, and we weren't having very much luck. So we found out where people couldn't remember things. They were going Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, and then they got kind of stuck in James or Hebrews or Revelation or Exodus, whatever. And we found out that they got as far as 1 and 2 Corinthians, then they forgot Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and they couldn't remember the order. But what does that spell? Well, it spells Gentiles eat pork chops. You got it? Gentiles eat pork chops. Gentiles eat pork chops, or Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. Now, where did we get that crazy idea? Where did we get the idea of using the alphabet? Well, believe it or not, we got it from the book of Psalms. Here's Psalm 119. And the first 8 verses of Psalm 119, take a look at this. Verse 1 begins with letter A, verse 2A, verse 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A, 7A, 8A. And the next 8 begin with the letter B. And the next 8, C. And right on through it. Well, who inspired Psalm 119? Well, take a look at Lamentations. Chapter 1, verse 1 begins with the letter A. Verse 2, B. Verse C, 3, 4, D. Every verse begins with a different letter. That's how you remember it. Even the early church. Remember, you've seen the phrase or the word ichthus. Ichthus is an acrostic which stands for Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior. Those are the first letters of the Greek words made into ichthus. So the alphabet. Number 4, associate facts with objects and actions. And we'll take you to the seminar right now and show you a little of this in action.
Let me see if I can't review for you some of the Old Testament walkthrough using objects and actions. How many of you were at the Old Testament? How many were at the New Testament? Too many of you are there. Let's do something that you didn't learn, just so it works well. You have a second hand on your clock, Roger? Give me 2 minutes. Say when to go. Tell me go. Okay, go. We're going to change this land around to the land of the New Testament, and I'm going to teach the geography to you. If this direction is north, that direction would be south. And this would be, and that would be, say it again, ready? And this would be right here, the round lake called the Sea of Galilee. Sea of Galilee. Say it for me. Sea of Galilee. Take your finger and turn it upside down. Point your finger down and do a circle. Ready? Sea of Galilee. Flowing out of it's a long, windy river called the Jordan River. Wiggle it. Ready? Jordan River. And it flowed into what? The Dead Sea. Now kill it. Dead Sea. Dead Sea. Here we go. Ready? Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea. From here, all the way over would be the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean. In the Mediterranean, there's great big waves. So this whole division, when I go like this, let's kind of move together. You watch, you'll get sick. Ready? Mediterranean. In unison, kind of. Ready? Mediterranean. Watch again. Ready? Mediterranean. Here we go. Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea, Mediterranean. Now, this sea is 7 miles wide and 14 miles long. 7 by 14. Finger up. Ready? 7 by 14. The Dead Sea is 10 miles wide and 50 miles long. Long sea. It's getting shorter because it's evaporating until Christ comes. 10 by 50. Ready? 10 by 50. 7 by 14. 10 by 50. And in between the bottom of the Sea of Galilee, all the way to the top of the Dead Sea, is the old speed limit, 65 miles. 65, well, it's kind of the new one, too. 65 miles between here and here. So how far is it in the middle? 65.
See what I'm doing? Objects and actions. I'm helping the audience learn something through association.
Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea, Mediterranean, 7 by 14, 10 by 50, 65.
Well, that was fun, wasn't it? That was a part of the popular Walk Through the Old and New Testament seminars. If you've not had an opportunity yet to attend one of those, then look for them in your area. And if you'd like a free schedule of the seminars, just write us on the address on the bottom of the screen or call us on the number. But let's now get back to these 7 ways that you can take any amount of content, restructure it, and then just pour it right into the memory of the people that you're teaching. If you do that effectively, the people that you're teaching won't even have to concentrate. It'll just go right back into their back memory. Number 5, how do you do this? You impress the facts through drama. Through drama. You remember when God said that you're supposed to give an animal sacrifice for when you committed a sin? That you would take a sheep or a lamb and you'd bring it over to the priest. And what did you have to do? You had to become a part of the drama yourself. You had to put your hands on the head of that sheep. You had to express your sin. And then what would take place is the priest would slit the throat of that lamb, representing the fact that your sins required the death penalty. That instead of you dying for your sin, the lamb was dying for your sin. What an incredible drama. I imagine when you did that, you realized that sheep was dying simply for your sin, that you never forgot that. And it made you think the next time you considered having a sin, what you had to do to get it forgiven or covered. Think also about the Passover celebration, which was held over these many hundreds of years by the Jewish families as they'd meet together, and the father or the elder would sit at the end of the table and rehearse the whole Passover, the Seder, take the unleavened bread and break it and tell the story. It was a drama that was rehearsed year after year. Well, we also do this in the New Testament, didn't we? Remember how Jesus Christ wanted us to remember him through the communion, in which he said, do this in remembrance of me. That every time we celebrate communion, what are we doing? We're having a drama, a little one, only we're not acting it, we're in the drama. The whole